Hi, everyone. Welcome to my library. um, I've never shown my books in the background before because I've long had a dream of building my own bookshelves, and that's never happened. So my books live on the floor like this. You may be wondering why I'm meeting you on the floor and who this is. Um, so this is Bella. Um, we just adopted her a few days ago. She was a foster, and I was fostering her, and I took her home, and I thought, gosh, I just really get along with this dog so well. Maybe I should adopt her. And then one day later, I only fostered her for a day. Someone wanted to adopt her. So with a heavy heart, I took her back. She was adopted, and then her adopter unfortunately returned her because he got a husky because he was this really active young man, um, and I guess she wasn't athletic enough. She's very, very heat sensitive, it seems to me. She's now walked off to get a toy or something. Anyway, she's very heat sensitive, and so she doesn't do too well in the heat. So he returned her, and the shelter called me and said that she'd been returned. And the main reason she'd been in foster was because she found the shelter so stressful. Like she couldn't eat. She was just not able to really go to the bathroom. She was just having a lot of issues. So I just couldn't stand the idea of her going back to the shelter. So I adopted her. So that's Bella. She's joined us. She's usually like my little shadow. She just follows me everywhere. Um, I can hear her drinking water right now. But anyway, so that's Bella. I don't know if she'll appear in videos very often because she's such a big doggy. She doesn't join me up on the furniture that much. But I just wanted to introduce her to you all. But the point of this video was actually to do a tag, not to snuggle my dog, much as I like to do so. She's sniffing my camera right now. There she is. She's wondering what I'm doing. So this is oh my gosh, I copied this to my iPad so quickly that I didn't put the name. I think it was the in or out tag. And Andrew at You Could Be Reading More tagged me. And I have another tag that I'm going to do very soon from Isaiah. But I'm doing this one first because this one was easier and I've not had that much time this week to do much other than pet Bella, which isn't that bad, but I haven't had any chance to like think too deeply about stuff. So this one seemed easier. So I'm going to do the in or out tag. So that's just 26 or 27 questions about what kind of literature you like. And so, yeah, question number one is reading the last page first. I thought I invented this when I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I used to get so impatient when I would read a book to know how the book ended that eventually I had to instigate or initiate reading the very last page first. I don't do that anymore, and I haven't done it since I was probably like a preteen, but it just helped me have more patience while I was reading the book because I would notice that I couldn't really enjoy the book that much because I was so curious about how it would end. And what I found from reading the last page first is that it almost never tells you anything much about the book. And maybe that's what got me out of the habit of doing that. But without the context, you have no idea what's being talked about. And rarely does anything really get explained, even as you keep reading through the book. I've never been very sensitive about spoilers, so this has never been a problem for me, but it's just not something I really do anymore either. But yes, I was insane enough that I used to do that as a kid. Enemies to lovers? Um, yeah, like Andrew in his tag kept saying if it's done well, and I kind of agree with him. Like almost anything can be fun if it's done well. Maybe Pride and Prejudice is like the original enemies to lovers, right? And I like Pride and Prejudice, so yeah, if it's done well, why not? Yeah. Dream sequences, I find that dream sequences a lot of times can be kind of self-indulgent. Like they're sort of, I think they're more fun for the author to write than for the reader to read. But again, if it's done well, I think it can be be good. I think it's just that one has to be careful not to make them like too obvious, like the symbolism too obvious, I guess. Or on the other hand, just too absurd and nonsensical. I think there's kind of a balance. But when that balance is struck, I think it can be very good. Number 4 is love triangles. I'm blanking on a love triangle right now. This is the least preparation I've ever done for a tag. I'm blanking on any literary love triangles, but I have nothing against them in principle. It's an engine of drama, and who doesn't like that? So I think I'm cool with love triangles. Cracked spines. I've gone back and forth. There have been times in my life where, when I was young, I had no notion that we should be careful with books, and I would crack the spines like I didn't even think about it. And yes, Bella, are you a good girl? Do you like cracked spines? I think you don't. Yeah, I used to just crack the spine because I didn't have any notion of not cracking a spine. And then when I got a little bit older, because I would read a lot of old books, I would notice that cracking the spine would make the pages like kind of fall out of a lot of like cheaper books, especially like, paperbacks that are glued or whatever. And that I didn't like, because I don't, one thing I don't like is I don't like having pages that are free in the book that just kind of like, they're popping out the entire time you're reading the book. They're kind of an annoyance. You're scared you're going to lose them. And so I stopped cracking spines. But I also don't like treating books like they're too gingerly. And I think that's one of the other reasons I got out of like fine press books, because I don't actually naturally want to be that careful with books. And now I guess I'm sort of in a middle place where I don't mind cracking a spine or two, but I'm not super precious with my books either. I guess I would just say that I try to keep it to the point where the pages aren't going to fall out. Like, I like to have books that I think I can read more than once, even when I buy them used. But other than that, I'm not very concerned about cracked spines and things, unless it's one of my fine press books. But you can't really crack the spine on those anyway, because they're sewn bindings anyway. Number 6 is Back to My Small Town. I can't think of any books that I've read that are about back to my small town, but I know that in movies, I think it can be really cute because Back to My Small Town is a little bit like, it's always going to be a story about people who grew up together. And I think those are fun because you get a kind of informality with people you grew up with, a kind of like deep, like shared bond and understanding that I think is very special. And as someone who's moved really, really far away from my large hometown, it's not something I've ever experienced. Like going back to this place where everyone kind of knows who you are. I think that seems appealing. I like it. Number 7 is Monsters Are Regular People. I like this in principle. I sometimes feel like we've gone too far in the direction of Monsters Are Regular People, as in we've learned to sympathize with the anti-hero, with the bad guy, with the monsters so much that I almost feel like now it's become almost like a default or something. We have too much sympathy for the devil and not enough sympathy for the angels in our nature. So in principle, I mean, especially when I was younger, I loved stories like this. But now I almost feel like it's become almost cliche. Like I've become almost kind of tired of monsters as regular people. I think at this point, the greatest enjoyment I can get out of this kind of story, because I've just seen so many of them, is probably like a comedy, more so than, well, I don't know. As Andrew was saying, if it's done well, I mean, if it's done well, any of these can be great. But I think it's something that I used to love so much that I think I've burnt myself out on them a little bit, like eating way too much chocolate in one day or something. Number 8 is no paragraph breaks. Oh gosh, I prefer not to have this. I mean, I've read experimental stuff that I've enjoyed that has no paragraphs. But again, it's the kind of thing where I think at this point, being experimental in that way has kind of already been done. We've seen it before, so it's not really achieving much to have no paragraph breaks unless there's a really, really good motivation for it. And it just puts a lot of onus on the reader for no real purpose. Like maybe if there were a really good reason for it that I can't think of, it would make sense. But generally with stuff like that, with experimentation in form and things, I feel like they have to be motivated. It can't just be like, look, isn't this cool? Especially if it's something as old or as already done as no paragraph breaks. Generally, I think you kind of you need to justify that if you're gonna, if you're gonna do it. Number 9, multi-generational sagas. I feel like I'm the only person who doesn't like absolutely love these. Usually, you know, if I look at the back of a book and it says like, you know, the multi-generational story of a family and the blah, 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 my eyes do kind of glaze over a little bit. I don't know why. I mean, if it's done well, as we keep saying, of course, of course. And there's no reason it's not interesting, like in principle. I think it should be. But somehow those kinds of stories just don't usually appeal to me. It's not the multi-generationalness itself, but just the types of stories that are multi-generational stories tend not to be the ones that I read a lot. I don't know why. It's not that I need to have like a single protagonist in things that I read. I'm happy to read things that have like lots of different characters, but I don't know. There's something about most multi-generational sagas. Maybe they're a little bit sentimental for me, or they're a little bit, oh, I don't know, too domestic or something. I'm not really sure what it is, but I'm sure there have been ones that I've liked. I just am blanking on it right now. Number 10, rereading. Of course, rereading, always rereading. I'm always wishing that I reread more. I think it was Nabokov or Nabokov, however you like to say it, who said there is no such thing as reading, there is only rereading. That's kind of how I feel. I feel like he goes on to say something about how the first time you read, you can't really analyze because you're so caught up in the story. You're swept away by the momentum. You just want to know what happens. And it's only on the second reading that you start understanding the structure of the book, that you start seeing what, like, you know, the mechanics underneath, the writing that's underneath. And I kind of agree with that. And I think it's a real shame that I don't reread more often, because I think it is really rewarding. And I think rereading is terribly undervalued, including by me. Artificial intelligence, number 11, sorry, artificial intelligence. I don't know what this means. Does it mean the plot has to do with artificial intelligence, or it's written by artificial intelligence? I think you'll be hard pressed to find anyone who would like to read books written by AI. I mean, there are going to be very few people who would like that. So I'm just going to assume that this means stories about artificial intelligence. And yeah, why not? That seems fun and interesting. There are a lot of different ways to conceive of artificial intelligence. Again, I think this is something that used to really, really interest me, because it was like, yeah, is it a person or isn't it? And I think now the question has been asked so many times that I feel like we immediately default to it's a person now, because we've just seen those kinds of stories so many times, both in literature and in like TV and movies. And now it's like we always come down on the side of, oh yeah, it is a person, which might be the correct answer, but I feel like the question now kind of lacks a little bit of the tension. It lacks the immediacy, the wrenching feeling of like, oh, which way? I feel like as a society we've kind of I feel like we almost anthropomorphize things too quickly at this point. In the past we used to think that, like Descartes or whatever, that animals were robots, and now we sort of immediately assume robots are people. So I think this used to be a more interesting question or a more interesting subject in the past when it felt a little fresher. And now I think it's just been done so many times that, again, it's got a little bit less of that sort of spark of interest as it used to. But I mean, I'm still happy to read stories about that. Number 12, drop caps. Yes, who doesn't like drop caps? I love drop caps. Those are fun. I really like decorative elements in my books. I think they're really fun. I particularly really like, for some reason, pen and ink art. Like I like line art a lot. I love all those old like Punch cartoons and like I like that kind of drawing style. So, and I really, really love illuminated manuscripts. So, yeah, I definitely like drop caps. I almost never see them, but they're fun. Number 13, happy endings. Yes, of course, happy endings. Just like it's, unoriginal to have every ending be happy, it's also unoriginal to have every ending be miserable and terrible. It takes the mystery out of what you're reading. So we have to have some happy endings in order for the sad endings to have any meaning, and vice versa. So I like happy endings. I also think sometimes happy endings are kind of harder to achieve, depending on the book. It's easy to kind of be maudlin and kill your characters in a way because you kind of know where to go, I guess, even though it's more painful. But to set everything up such that it's resolved in a way that feels satisfying and not too neat, but kind of realistic, but not over explaining, but leaving the reader with a little bit to wonder about, but blah. I feel like that can be kind of a tightrope to walk for especially like in an age as cynical as ours. So I like happy endings. I think they're interesting, and they can be just as interesting as sad endings. And sometimes they do stick in my mind, maybe not quite as much as sad endings, but I think they do. Sometimes you continue to think about them. I think a lot of people don't like happy endings because they say it makes the story feel meaningless or something, but not for me. Um, 14, plot points that only converge at the end. Oh, this is one of my favorite conventions. I love plot points that only converge at the end. That's got to be one of the most fun things to read. I love that kind of thing. If anyone knows of any books that have really good plot points that only converge at the end, please let me know in the comments, because this is like one of the things I just like. It's one of my favorite like story mechanics. I love that kind of thing. I love parallelism. I love watching different people sort of unknowingly interact in the similar places, or in the same way or whatever. That stuff just I don't know. It's like the ASMR of like of reading for me. It's just like, ooh, okay. Number 15, detailed magic systems. I haven't read a lot of books that have detailed magic systems. I'm not like a huge magic system person. I think it could be interesting, especially if you set up clever limitations to the magic, which later comes up in a sort of unexpected way. Like, oh no, but we can't because the magic thing only works 3 times and now I need a fourth, or whatever. Um, Sometimes it can feel arbitrary when someone can do something and when they can't do something in fantasy things and sci-fi as well. So maybe a really detailed magic system would do better at justifying when something can happen and when something can't happen. I remember when I was a little kid, it was the little literary critic in me, I guess, but I used to love watching Spider-Man. And I remember being in like second grade or something and realizing that it was completely random when he would run out of his silk cartridge thing. So he's always running out. He had these silk cartridges on his wrist that he made, so they weren't like natural. I think in the movie it's just part of what he is, but in the show he has these cartridges and he has to make his own webbing, and that's what lets him like travel around. And I remember even in second grade, being like when I was about 7 or something, thinking, yeah, but sometimes those cartridges last really, really long, and sometimes they just run out suddenly, and always at the worst, like most convenient moment. And I remember being somewhat skeptical. And so maybe if there had been a detailed Spider-Man system that had a little gauge that showed us exactly when he was going to run out, it would be more clever. It would be more clever when it was utilized really well. Like, oh right, we were watching all along that the webbing was like running out, and then look at what happened. He's like run out. I don't really know. I haven't read a lot of detailed magic systems, but I can definitely see how that would be appealing. For me, though, usually when things are really intricate, I usually prefer nonfiction. Like if I'm going to read about a really complicated family tree or a really complicated like alchemical system or whatever, usually I'd probably prefer reading some history or history of science. I mean, there's so much good stuff that's also real, and then I kind of feel more It motivates me more to like learn about it in detail, just realizing that it's something that really happens. Sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. So number 16, classic fantasy races. Yes, I loved. I think I read Lord of the Rings when I was very little, like not very little, like 13 or 14, when I was kind of young. And what's interesting about these classic fantasy races is seeing how you change. So when I was 13 or 14, oh, it was all about the elves. I just love the elves. Oh, they're so elegant. They're so amazing. They're immortal. And like, they're so refined and they seem so amazing. And then as I got older, it's kind of like, elves are kind of boring. Like, give me something else. Give me dwarves. Give me like, give me affable orcs who are trying to like, rise above like what they've been destined to be or whatever. Like, give me some more interest. Give me some more grit. Give me something else. And I think first of all, I think archetypes are a great place, a great jumping off point for creativity. But second of all, having continuity of that type, like having, for instance, classic fantasy characters from the time you're very young. I think it's just interesting to see how you yourself evolve as you get older. And so, yeah, I like classic fantasy races and I like dragons and all that stuff. I think the only thing, you know what? I think I like the fantastical elements of fantasy consistently more, or rather the fact that they're often the same like kind of thing, like dragons and whatnot. I think I like that stuff more than just the fact that fantasy is very often set in like a stereotyped, somewhat medieval setting. I feel like that gets boring. Like, I remember when I was young, again, really young. I don't know why I'm thinking about all these books I read when I was really young. But this one was when I was probably like 11 or something. And I think it was called Borderlands. And it was an anthology of little. They were every short story was written by a different author, but it all took place in the same world. And it was this like cyberpunk or no steampunk or punk-ish, I don't know, maybe this is before steampunk and cyberpunk, I don't know, but it was kind of this like city that had like motorcycles and like and dark alleyways and gangs and crime, but then there was also fantasy. And I remember being really intrigued by that because it was kind of a mix that I hadn't seen before. And now I think it's probably pretty well explored if I were to look into that, but I just don't see that kind of fantasy as often. Like fantasy that's in different sort of settings, or that just has sort of different social strata, I guess. Most fantasy, it's like vaguely medieval socially as well. Like there are kings and queens. There are no different types of government systems. A lot of it, I think, is a lot of times metaphors for exploring things like racism. So like, orcs are looked down upon or elves are looked down upon or whatever. Women are always secondary, women are always sort of sidelined within the book. I mean, the book itself might have like a really strong female character or something, or the strongest character might be a woman. But within the world of the book, usually women are sidelined in whatever way. And so that can start feeling a little bit like we're in this like grooved like rut and we're just kind of going along on tracks like that. And I don't know why I'm cool with the fantasy races being kind of these archetypes, but the setting I feel like should be, I like having different settings. I don't know. But I like the classic fantasy races. I have kind of a affinity or soft spot for those. I don't know. I grew up with them. Number 17, unreliable narrators. Again, it has to be done well. As in, I don't like it when the author is having a good time at the reader's expense. Like it's like the book is author versus reader. And when sort of unfairly something is revealed really late or something like that, that sort of seems manipulative. That can sometimes happen with unreliable narrators. But sometimes unreliable narrators can be really, really effective. I'm trying to remember this book I read. It was really good. And I read it somewhat recently and I just cannot recall the name of it. But it's about, It's about the scientific revolution. Oh my gosh, how can I not remember this? And each one has a different narrator. Oh my gosh. I will add it here after editing, but it's a really good book if you like unreliable narrators, if you like historical fiction, if you just like good writing. I liked that book. I did feel that it was, I did ultimately feel that it was a little bit aloof or like lacking. There was something about it that was lacking in genuine emotion or something, but I just thought like it was done really well. Like the structure was good, and that had might be a spoiler somewhat to say, but it had some unreliable narrators. But I think that's to be expected when you see that everything is in first person and it's kind of a mystery and stuff like that. So I liked that book. 18 evil protagonists. I feel like this kind of goes along with monsters are regular people. Again, completely fine with evil protagonists. I feel like I've seen it a lot though. At this point, it almost feels transgressive to have a good guy who's just a good guy, like to have a hero who's just a hero and isn't secretly, I don't know, doesn't fall, doesn't get fed up, but actually makes like the good choice every time. I feel like we've become a little bit obsessed with the fallen hero or the hero that kind of gives in finally or whatever. And we've become kind of obsessed with uh, what's the word? Like recuperating the image of bad guys, I guess. And I was a huge fan of that at the beginning. And now I think I'm a little bit like, you can kind of like, it's become a little paint by numbers. Like you can kind of predict what's going to happen. I think that's kind of why I loved Gawain and the Green Knight a lot, because that is one where the protagonist isn't evil, but he's flawed. And it's done very, very well and very convincingly without sort of, I mean, it's really, really old, but without falling into sort of the cliches of today. And he's neither evil nor good. He doesn't just give in and like give up or whatever and become a bad guy. But neither is he like such a bad guy that, you know, the challenge is to even like this guy. So I love that. I'm fine with evil protagonists, but I'd like to see some innovation in the evil protagonist arena. Number 19, The Chosen One. When I was a kid, again, I used to like the Chosen One stories a lot when they were really new to me. But I think now, yeah, I can't remember the last time I did enjoy a Chosen One story. Again, if it's done well, of course, go ahead. Like, I can be easily convinced that a Chosen One story is a good story. But I think I've kind of become a little like disenchanted with the Chosen One because it sort of tells you how the story is going to go all along, doesn't it? And I think I've just seen it too many times. So, number 20, When the Protagonist Dies. Well, when the protagonist dies, yes, I mean, I am a sucker for that kind of story. The protagonist dying, I think, is often very, very effective. You have to be careful with it, but it can be very, very effective. So I kind of like stories in which the protagonist dies, or stories in which the story itself, the book itself, sort of encapsulates the entire life and being of the protagonist. Like you see everything. And so it's the opposite of an open-ended conclusion, right? You know exactly like what has happened. There is no further on. I guess it could be emotionally manipulative, but I feel like most of the time when I see this done, it's not. It's usually done pretty well. I think because as an author, you have to be fairly brave to to kill off your main character. But I can also often add like a really nice shape to the narrative, I feel, and that's kind of why I like that. Really long chapters. I have to admit, I just don't notice how long chapters are. If they're short or they're long, it makes pretty much no difference to me. If it's the kind of book where in every chapter you're kind of restarting, so like every chapter is a different narrator or every chapter is a different place or time or something, then I think I actually prefer really long chapters because I don't like sort of like going into too many places all at once. I want to settle in and kind of get into a groove. But if it's not that kind of book, I honestly don't really notice. I occasionally will keep reading until I get to the end of a chapter before I like close the book, but actually very often I don't bother with that either. I just kind of like, when I'm done, I just kind of close the book. And I kind of like ending in the middle of a chapter because I can kind of remember what was going on. Sometimes you open to a new chapter and it's like you can't really, I don't know, for a second you kind of can't remember what went before because it's suddenly new. So sometimes I like to stop in the middle of a chapter. I don't know. That's just me. I don't really notice. Number 22, French flaps. Yeah, they're fine. I don't have a strong opinion on French flaps. Yeah, they're nice. They're good. 23, deckled edges. I can never decide how I feel about deckled edges. I think they make it easier to turn the page, maybe. I don't think they look as nice as other people think they look. They're fine. A deckled edge will never convince me or to buy or not buy a book. They're just kind of there for me. It's not something that's like very important to me. 24, signed copies by author. Yeah, like sometimes I do like that. Just because, I don't know, it's kind of like I've always liked museums. I've always liked places where something that you've heard of a lot of times comes into actual tangible reality. Like, oh my God, there that really is that thing that I knew probably existed but I didn't realize, or it's one of those things I've read about but I've never seen in real life. I think we're, as human beings, we're very tactile, we're very visual, and even if we know abstractly that something is real, we don't quite understand it unless we can touch it, unless we can see it. And I think that's what a signed copy by an author kind of does. Like, oh, okay, like this was touched by the author at some point. This is their handwriting. And it's not about idolizing an author, but it's more like, oh, there's a real person behind this. I think some time ago I read something about how it was condemnatory of the fact that people would rather fly out to Greece and sit in the amphitheater where Socrates or Plato, I guess Plato spoke. And they'll, people will spend thousands of dollars to do that, and they'll be more amazed by that, seeing the spot where Plato spoke, than reading his dialogues, reading his actual thoughts, his feelings and thoughts. But I don't totally agree with that, because it wouldn't be very special to you if you didn't feel a connection to Plato, and you wouldn't feel that much of a connection to, you feel much more rather of a connection to Plato when you have read him. But to realize that these aren't just words on a page, but they came from a person, and that person existed in the physical world, and here they were, I think there's something really special about that, that I think is meaningful. It's not just human beings being silly, but I think it makes us feel more connected to grand things, to things that are far away from our experience, to things from long ago or far away. And I don't think I own one book that's signed by the author. It is Machiavellian Hell. Not signed by the author. It is signed by the author, but it has a little letter to Robert Nozick. I think I may have shown it on this channel before. That's super cool, but that was an accidental purchase. It just came with this letter from the author De Grazia to Robert Nozick, which was kind of cool. So it was so I know not only that it was signed by the author, but it sat in Robert Nozick's library for some amount of time, and then somehow made it over to me. That's cool. It's kind of like, stories like, what is it, The Red Violin or whatever, where you watch the lifetime of a particular like object. I find that kind of stuff fascinating. And if it weren't sort of fetishized and super expensive, I think I would have more books that were signed by the author. There's something cool about that. It becomes sort of like an artifact. It becomes an individual, that particular copy of the book also, that it has a history, it has a present, and it has a future because it's become unique. So I think there are a lot of reasons to be interested in signed copies. So I think it's cool. Number 25, dog earring pages. This is kind of like cracking spines. So when I was younger, I used to dog ear pages all the time. I didn't have bookmarks, and it didn't occur to me that this could be a bad thing. I got older and like a lot of people were really against dog earing, so I stopped. I still dog ear a page if like I have nothing else, but usually I use a bookmark or something, or I just turn the book over. Again, I'm not super precious about it if it's not one of my fine press books. I like having books that are part of my life, I guess, not things that I have to set aside for myself and treat specially. But I understand not wanting creases on your books too. It's hard to say. I'm fine either way, I guess. 26, chapter titles instead of numbers. I didn't even know this was something that people don't like. I've never really thought about. I like chapter titles. I think chapter titles are like a place. I don't know. They're another place for creativity. They're another place for cleverness, for making you interested in what you're about to read. I like chapter titles. Numbers are fine too, but I really feel that, I don't know, I'm getting like a million texts right now. I'm sorry. I think chapter titles are cool. I don't know. I didn't know that some people don't like it. I don't know why people wouldn't like it. So, although I will say that I don't super like, what are they called? Epigrams? I can't remember right off the top of my head now, but when there's like a little quote at the beginning of a chapter, I usually find, number one, that the quote isn't very interesting, and number two, it doesn't really color the way I read the chapter. Somehow I don't really go for that much. I don't know why. I guess because it often just kind of feels like extraneous. Even if you go back after you've read the chapter, it's usually like, okay, I guess. Yeah, it was sort of related, I guess. Big pet peeve of mine when you're reading something really, really old and the quote is in an untranslated language because they just assume you speak the language. Then I always have to look it up and it's usually disappointing. So that's a pet peeve of mine. And number 27, tag others. I am running around trying to get Bella a dog sitter because she has a little bit of separation anxiety right now from being in a new place and I have to go to work and all this stuff. And I've just been running around so much. I didn't plan this video, and I don't know if I'll have a chance to like type out a million people to tag, but I will. If I do, I'll tag people in the description. I'm sorry if this was kind of like a more boring video than usual, but I just wanted to be able to get this tag done and to introduce you guys to Bella. And yeah, I'm sorry it's a little bit rushed, but I hope it was fun to watch anyway, and you get a little sneak peek at a very small part of my library. So my dream, I didn't really explain, but my dream is I have this big window over here on this side. And my dream is to make a low bookshelf that's kind of like a bench. And so all the books would be underneath, and then on top would be a long bench. So you could sit on the bookcase as a bench and pick your book and read it. And in this particular space, it's kind of hard to show what it looks like. But in this particular space, there's the big window. It would wrap all the way around on 3 sides. And I think it would just look really cool in this particular space. But I have yet to refine my woodworking skills. So it's been like this for quite a while. And so that's why you never see books in my background, because I'd have to sit on the floor. So anyway, I hope you're all doing well, and I'll be back soon with another tag and a couple of other videos I have in the hopper. So I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.